Yay, we're recording. Okay, so I've been asked by a question from a friend of the wife. How do I paint thin lines with acrylic? So this is a little practical demonstration of how I do it. Might not be how everybody does it, but this is how I've kind of blundered my way through to do it. So without further ado, we'll point at the board and we'll go forward and have a little practice demo. See how we get on. When I was very young, I used to think the best way of painting fine lines with a very small brush like that, which does have its merits, but there are limitations to that. Another option is one of these brushes, which is only nylon, it's only cheap, nothing special. But okay, so well, that's very fat, but if you turn it on its end, it becomes very thin. So you can actually potentially draw lines using the very tip. If you've got paint on there, it's a bit spread out at the moment, but it can do that. Another option is using one of these, palette knife, and if you put that, get some paint on the edge there, you can potentially just use that and drop it on. The other option is something called a rigger, basically. If I get it up close to the lens, it's got very long, I'll put my hand around it, might be see it a bit better. It's got very long fibres. The plus side is that because it's got longer fibres, you get more paint on there. The tiny little short ones, you don't get enough paint on there, and that's part of the problem. So what I'll do is I'll mix up some paint and do a demo on here, and you can see whether or which thing might actually suit your purposes. I can go and grab that. So I'll put that in there, and you can probably just see, hopefully we get a chisel edge, so potentially you can do that and you can build up a series of lines from that. It's not going to give you a very crisp line, but if you're doing waves or something like that, you can get the effect of waves in the distance. You get the white tops basically, but you've got to be pretty good with that. So we use this very small one here, which we'll coat with a bit of paint, and it's kind of different. You kind of got to pull it, and you can see you can kind of get the strokes, but they're pretty short, so you kind of got to load the brush up to try and get anything out of it, and there's a risk that you might push too far in and you'll get a thick line like that. So you've kind of got to be very good about how you do it. You can't push it because it will just fall apart. My favourite one, which is the rigger. I pray God this works, otherwise I'm going to look like a complete idiot. But you can pull a long line like that, and you can see it. So taking it quite easy. It didn't take much effort into it. Now obviously I'm not using any straight implement. I'm just basically dragging the line, and it'll go for some while because you've got more paint on there, so you can kind of do that. And if you had a straight edge, if you use that, stick the ferrule in there, hold it with your finger as well, and then you can basically almost draw straight lines. So if I do one at an angle, and if we just pop that in there, so you get the idea that you can load things up. It's not a particularly thin line, but with a bit of practice, we can get slightly thinner lines. Palette knife, but in essence you can start building up different bits, and you can push them around. If you've got a bit of a blob, you can kind of move things around. You can kind of get ripples, and you can kind of drag the knife a little bit if you wanted to get more shape and definition. So it gives you that effect, which is not bad, but ultimately if you want to have a nice thin line, you kind of got to use the rigger brush. There's nothing beats that. And you can get these with actually longer bristles than these. In essence, you can do that. So you can do that. Now if you see that my hand naturally wobbles a bit, everybody's hand does, you're not going to get a super smooth curve. So if you've got, I think it's a maul, which is the sort of stick, you can put a stick on there and then you can sort of put it on there and drag the stick round, and you'll get those super curves if you want to do that. Now if I couldn't have done that with a tiny brush, that would have been hopeless. And equally I couldn't have done it with a chisel edge, and I couldn't have done it with a palette knife. So the rigger is the one to go for if you want to paint long, thin lines.